It's 3 a.m. The entire city is asleep. Every single person, unconscious, dreaming, warm in their beds, breathing slowly in the silence that only exists in the deepest part of the night. Every person except one. This one person is single-handedly waking up an entire city, street by street, window by window, name by name. And here's the question nobody ever asks. Who was waking them up?
It's the 1800s. The Industrial Revolution is ripping through Britain like a freight train that has completely lost its brakes. Factories are opening on every corner. Mines are going deeper. Cities are exploding with workers. Men, women, and children pouring in from the countryside, all chasing the same desperate promise of steady wages. And every single one of those workers has one terrifying, non-negotiable rule. Be at your post on time or lose everything. Not a warning, not a second chance. Miss your shift and you don't just get fired. You get fined, blacklisted. Your family goes hungry. Your children feel it in their stomachs before they even understand why. The stakes were not abstract. They were immediate and brutal. And the problem? Alarm clocks barely existed.
The ones that did were wildly unreliable and cost more than a week's wages, sometimes 2 weeks. For most working-class families, a personal alarm clock wasn't a luxury, it was a fantasy. So what did people do? They hired a stranger to walk through the dark and knock on their window every single morning. That stranger had a name. They were called the knocker-upper.
Here is how it worked. You paid a knocker-upper a few pence a week. In return, every morning, no matter the weather, no matter how dark or cold, they showed up outside your window at your agreed time and made enough noise to drag you back from sleep. Simple enough, right? Except there was a catch. The person next to you didn't pay, didn't want to be woken up. So the knocker-upper had to solve one of the strangest technical problems in history. How do you wake exactly one person and nobody else? The first attempt was obvious. Knock on the door. Disaster. It woke everyone. So they evolved. They switched to long bamboo poles, sometimes 12 feet long, designed to reach upper floor bedroom windows specifically. Some used soft-tipped hammers, some used rattles, some used stiff wire bent into a fan shape that scraped across the glass in a specific pattern. But the gold standard? A pea shooter. Mary Smith of East London figured it out. Dried peas fired at a glass window create a sharp, high-frequency rattle, loud enough to punch through deep sleep, quiet enough to dissolve before reaching the next window. This woman invented acoustic precision engineering with a blowpipe. In 1931, without a single physics textbook. She just figured it out through trial and error and the very practical motivation of not getting shouted at by angry neighbors every morning. And in the mining communities of Durham, workers built chalkboards directly into their exterior walls, where they'd write their shift time every night. The knocker-upper would read it in the dark, in the rain, at 4 a.m. That crude piece of chalk on a wall was the world's first smart home scheduling system, without the app, without the electricity, without anyone recognizing it as remarkable.
Close your eyes and picture a knocker-upper. You're probably imagining a tough Victorian man in a flat cap, right? Here's the thing that changes everything. The profession was dominated by elderly men and pregnant women. The two groups Victorian society had thrown away, too old for the factory floor, too pregnant for respectable employment, were the invisible engine keeping the Industrial Revolution alive every single morning. A woman named Mrs. Waters stumbled into the job almost by accident. Her neighbors needed someone to wake them at 3 a.m. They offered her half a crown. She said yes, because half a crown was half a crown. 5 years later, she had 95 paying customers. She had built a route, memorized 95 windows, 95 wake-up times, 95 different personalities behind the glass. The money put her son through school. It supported her invalid husband through years of illness. All of this at a time when women had almost no financial independence at all. And if you didn't pay her, she simply didn't knock. You slept in. You missed your shift. You faced the consequences. The knocker-uppers didn't beg for payment. They didn't send polite reminders. They held leverage. Real, irreplaceable leverage. And the good ones knew it. Surge pricing, union negotiations, and a war nobody remembers. Then winter came.
When the cold hit and workers became near impossible to drag from their beds, knocker-uppers did something economic textbooks wouldn't describe for another century.
They raised their prices, surge pricing, 150 years before Uber invented it. And it worked, because what were you going to do? Stop paying and risk your livelihood? The factories weren't happy. By the 1870s, the cost of hiring a knocker-upper had become a formal agenda item in labor union negotiations. Workers demanded factories cover the cost as part of employment contracts. Factories hit back. Some installed electric buzzers wired into workers' homes, blasting entire streets awake at set times. The world's first centralized alarm systems, invented not out of innovation, but specifically to destroy the knocker-uppers' market power. Others hired their own knocker-uppers directly, cutting out the independent operators entirely. And in 1914, The Guardian ran an article mourning the profession, warning that the cheap American clock was killing the industry. The knocker-uppers saw it coming. They just couldn't stop it.
But here's what nobody talks about. What was it actually like to be the only person awake in an entire city every single morning, walking through streets that belonged to no one during those particular hours, carrying in your head the precise locations of dozens of windows, dozens of wake-up times, dozens of strangers who were counting on you completely? We know, because one of them told us. In 1878, Mrs. Waters gave an interview to a Canadian journalist, and what she said is unlike anything you'd expect. She said she could read the entire personality of a person just from how they woke up. A surly fellow would growl and knock things about as he came to the window. His responding rap would sound as peevish as possible. But the good-tempered man, you could hear from his very trud that he was grateful. His reply tap sounded quite musical, and when he spoke and bade you good morning, it was really encouraging. She knew one man given to drink. He'd never properly come to the window, just angry muttering and muffled oaths from somewhere behind the glass. Some knocker-uppers had a strict rule. They refused to leave until they got a confirmed response. A knockback, a spoken word, a shadow moving behind the curtain, a lamp being lit.
They refused to leave until they were certain, because their job wasn't just to make noise, it was to make sure a specific, irreplaceable person was genuinely awake and moving, someone with a family and a life that depended entirely on showing up. For dock workers in London, the work took on something almost poetic. The tides dictated when ships moved, which dictated when workers started, which meant the knocker-upper schedule wasn't ruled by the clock at all. It was ruled by the ocean, by the slow, indifferent pull of the moon on the water, by forces that cared nothing for shift schedules or employment contracts. The ocean said when, and the knocker-upper adjusted. And then, slowly, the cheap alarm clock arrived. Not overnight, not dramatically. A long, gradual erosion across decades. Unremarkable on any single day, but total across years. The last known professional knocker-upper in England was still working in Burnley, Lancashire, in 1963, 4 years before the first handheld calculator. Still walking through the dark with a pole, tapping windows, keeping faith with a profession the modern world had long since forgotten to say goodbye to. Manchester Metropolitan University still holds the only known archival video footage of knocker-uppers working. Grainy black and white film, 1940s Burnley. A person with a pole, a sleeping street, a window, a shadow stirring inside. The whole history of a profession in a few flickering seconds.
Think about this the next time your alarm goes off. Somewhere in Victorian England, in the rain, in the cold, in the darkness of 3 a.m. on a winter morning, an elderly woman was already awake, already walking, already standing outside a stranger's window, making sure the world got up. Not because anyone celebrated her, not because anyone would remember her name, but because 95 people had paid her a few pence and she had given them her word. And her word was worth something. If you think that story deserved to be told, leave a like. It takes 2 seconds and it's the only thing that tells me to keep digging up stories like this. I'll see you in the next one.